Today, we are going to learn a powerful opening weapon that is both strong, flexible, and can be used at any rating range. A few days ago, I sat down with Grandmaster Mauricio Flores, and in our first lesson, he taught me exactly how to crush my opponents with the Catalan. And after this video, you will learn how to crush your opponents with the Catalan as well. I am also attaching a link to GM Mauricio Flores' platform, chessminds.ai. Using this platform, you can study hundreds of openings just like this one in order to become a Grandmaster just like him. And make sure to use promo code CHESSGOON. With that in mind, let's get started.
All right. Okay, so let's talk about the Catalan today. Okay, so the Catalan is a great opening. First of all, I can tell you kind of from a personal standpoint. So I grew up playing e4. I always wanted to get some tactical positions, but it was a lot of work. It was a lot of work to kind of keep up with all the theory. So as I got a little bit older, I learned some positional ideas and started playing the Catalan. Had very good results without having to know as much theory. So there's still some theory we need to learn, but you can get good positions, good attacking chances, and you can leverage your understanding instead of having to memorize that much. Okay, so are you ready to go?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm super excited. I'm usually more of like a Queen's Gambit player, so I don't play the Catalan as much. So what are the big differences? It's the light squared bishop, right?
Right. So, well, let's maybe define the Catalan first of all. So I would say we play d4, then d5, c4, e6, knight f3, knight f6. And here's kind of the difference, right? It's like if you were playing like a more typical Queen's Gambit decline kind of position, you might go for like knight c3, bishop g5, take on d5, and then we'll play that kind of position, right? Here we're gonna play g3. So it's like we're sending the bishop the other way. And then there's this big question of what's gonna happen in the center, right? And there's this big question hanging over our heads. Is our opponent going to take? Are they gonna wait? Are we ever gonna push e4 ourselves, right? These are kind of the big questions that we need to be asking, right? So far so good?
Yeah, so I guess my question is, so you're going to put the bishop on g2. What happens if the bishop goes to g2 and then all of a sudden they're taking this pawn? Because usually in the Queen's Gambit, I would play e3. The bishop would take here, but here the bishop can't take.
Right, no, and that's fine. But that's actually, I would say, a solid 25% of the Catalan theory is about what to do when your opponent takes. There's a lot of ways that this could happen. Maybe there's two ways. One way is they take right away. If they take right away, you're going to see a lot of theory. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But to start, let's see what happens if they take on move 6. So that means bishop e7. Then, well, we castle, both of us. And now black decides to take, right? So now we kind of have to ask ourselves, how are we going to recover this pawn? The first thing we're going to do is attack it with the queen, okay? So we want to take this pawn, and then if our opponent just gives up the pawn, then we are relatively comfortable. We'll see that in the next line. But first, let's see kind of a naive approach, which is let's hold on to the pawn right away. So let's just play b5. So black here is just saying, you know what, this pawn is mine, I'm not giving it back.
This can't be that good, because now all of a sudden this entire the light squares are wide open for the bishop, right?
Right. So it could work out just fine, or maybe not. There's a lot of tactics in between, right? So first move is a4. We are kind of undermining the defender, right? If our opponent plays a6, we just take because we have a pin. So our opponent may want to push b4, do something more complicated, but here's a naive approach. They play c6. And the reason they play this is they are hoping that after we take, they have a very good pawn structure, right? It's like they have eliminated their double pawn, and now they have kind of a healthy pawn up. If we play a naive move like knight e5, and you know what? Black's strategy is kind of working, right? We don't want to go into this. Fortunately, we realized that knight e5 is their idea, so we can play knight g5 instead. And here we have a major threat. We are taking the rook, and if our opponent blocks, we have this beautiful mate on h7, and that's our first win with the Catalan.
So how do you defend that if you after knight to g5 is the game pretty much already lost?
Well, you can fight hard by playing h6 and then basically try to survive this. you are an exchange down, maybe a pawn down in some lines. But you can try to play this, right? And I've seen people who kind of manage to survive this, like with a little bit of cooperation from white. But yeah, objectively speaking, this is lost. So you could say that already c6 is a big mistake, right? Because after c6, you don't have a good response.
Is there a better way to try to I guess you can't really hold on to the pawn if you want to take, but is there a better way to play after taking the pawn?
Yes. So we can look at the next line, right? So in the next line, after queen c2, let's see something else. So, well, what would happen if our opponent is willing to return the pawn and want to play in an intelligent way? They will play a6. That's very normal. So their idea is that if we take, they are going to push, play bishop b7, and now they're fighting back, right? It's like they are controlling some good squares. It's hard for us to take the center, and very soon they will play knight b7 and c5, and that would be like a full equality in most lines. There's a lot of theory here, but when I used to play this with white, I never did too well. So the new way to play here is, here we just play a4. We play a4 to prevent b5, and now our opponent has to come up with a different way. So they will play bishop d7 and bishop c6. You see, it's like the same idea. They want to get the bishop on this long diagonal to fight back, not to give us the e4 square too quickly, and then we have to be careful. Here there's a little blunder.
So is the light square bishop necessarily worse on c6 versus on b7 where it's usually kettled?
Well, if they could put it on b7, it would be a little bit better because it would be out of reach from my knight. This is not a big deal, but yeah, I mean, it's a little bit worse. Imagine if you had the bishop on b7, you could push, which is essential in these pawn structures. Here, with the bishop on c6, you can't push. So it's already a little bit awkward. Now, there's still some blunders to be made with white. You could play knight c3, right? And that's a big mistake because you allow b5.
Oh, that pin on the a file, right?
Exactly. So it's like you want to take, but you can't. So now you have to remove your queen. They push. You have to go back. They push. I mean, they kind of attack your queen. Then they push again. And oh, no, this is very, very unpleasant. So it's like you try to hold on to the pawn, but you can't. Your opponent will take, and I've had several students lose in this exact way because the move knight c3 looks so natural, but it's just wrong. So that's my big warning here, is do not play knight c3 under any circumstances. You have to play bishop f4 first. And if you play bishop f4, everything is going fine for you.
So
now...
Yeah, so I was gonna say with knight c3 that could be tricky because I know with a lot of Queen's Gambit players, knight c3 is maybe the third or fourth move you're gonna play. Is this bad no matter what when they take, or even if they don't take, you shouldn't play knight c3?
Well, actually, in the Catalan, it's very common to put the knight on d2. Not always. Here we're gonna put it on c3 after all, but we have to be open-minded about it. So in some lines it will go to c3, in some it will go to d2. So, well, the point here is just if my opponent plays b5 now, I can just go back. So my queen is not blocked, and then I can keep this kind of X-ray pressure on the pawn on c7. And then if my opponent pushes, they cannot gain some tempos against my knight, so now I can develop here, and I'm very happy. I have a lot of kind of unpleasant jumps. So I'm doing quite well with white. So after bishop f4, what to do, right? Our opponent will likely play a5, because they want to develop their knight somehow, and b4 is a reasonable square to do it. So we will develop, and probably they will develop as well. Then we put our rook on c file. So, you know, we have two rooks, only one open file, so we have to decide where they go. Very standard is to put one rook in the open file and the other rook on the d file, because our opponent for sure wants to fight for the center. And the way they fight for the center is they push. So we want to be ready because the d file will have to open up sooner or later, right?
Will that rook go to the e file as well, or it's pretty much just rook c, rook d, and you're just gonna try to take over the center with the two semi-open files?
Rook e1 makes sense in many lines. It's not gonna happen here, but we have to be open-minded about it. It kind of just depends on the specific theory. So now knight b4, and now we can play knight e5. And well, I mean, we are attacking this piece with 3 already, right? So our opponent kind of has to do something with this bishop. So they will probably take. And then our opponent will probably play c6 just to kind of guard this pawn, which otherwise is under a lot of pressure. And here we don't miss this opportunity to play e4. So now we have this sort of a perfect center. And I think this is a good position to kind of try to discuss and understand the plans, right?
Yeah.
So
I was, because my first thought would be that you don't necessarily, like I at least the way I play, I usually like to keep this bishop alive no matter what. But you think that, well, you're saying here that actually trading the bishop is much better for white, or at least you have some sort of advantage.
well, I mean, we cannot really avoid trading the bishop, so we do it. If I could keep it on the board, I would, right? But I didn't have a choice. And it was the price I had to pay in order to sort of be able to play e4, which is my more important objective with white, right? Now, in terms of plans, let me tell you a little bit. Here we have a kind of a slab pawn structure, right? So if you think about my kind of a pawn structures book, that would be like chapter 4. And in that chapter, what we talk about is like how white has an advantage almost always in this pawn structure because of the control of the center. And because our opponent's only plans are to break in the center to hopefully equalize. So with white, what we want to do is expand, right? So maybe I will launch an attack. I might bring a knight to g5. I might sacrifice a piece in some lines. There's a lot of options I have. I might even just break in the center, like just put a rook on d1 and maybe just push. And trade a bunch of things and be just a little bit better, gain initiative, right? All of these things are possible. Our opponent is just kind of fighting. So maybe they offer a trade, we say no, thank you. And they try to trade something else and we just keep declining, right? It's like we are not excited to do any trades because we like the amount of pieces we have and it makes it hard for our opponent to move around. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because I think I'd wonder if trading down is good with the strong center, but what's the big plan? We have all these pieces, we have the center. How would you go about actually breaking through and winning a game like this?
Right. So first, as soon as I get a free move, like my opponent does nothing, let's say they play rook e8, I play h4. Then if they keep just kind of waiting around, I would probably play knight g5, threatening to bring the queen. My opponent takes, I'm happy, right? It's like I have a file. I can do big things here.
That already looks very strong with the rook in the open file. So, because I think my natural instinct would almost be to take with the bishop to protect the pawn structure, but taking the pawn, putting the rook on h1, that looks very scary for white.
Right. So I think what people will end up playing is they will play h6. And here we can go kind of brave and play just queen h5 anyway. Like if you want to take, go for it. And I think in many lines this is going to work. I'm not sure it will work here, but let's give it a try. Here, and then, well, I mean, the bishop needs to come to defend. We can play maybe rook here. The king is almost escaping, but now we have options. Like, I don't know if this is too crazy, but like maybe bishop here and like here. And I don't know if this is too much, but just to say something funny, let's say knight e3, you're hoping for counterplay. I just play queen h8 and you know that's game over, right? Now, let me be clear about something. I'm not saying that queen g5 definitely works, but I'm just giving this as an example of the kinds of things that black needs to worry about. And the reason that this position is annoying is because you have to spend all your time on the clock worrying whether this crazy line works or not. And then with white, if I don't like it, I can just play knight f3 and then keep going. Maybe I'll play g4, g5 next. So black always has to make these difficult decisions. And with white, I just have a simple game.
So with this, you're just looking to, because you already have your king on g2 after the bishop trade. So one of your main ideas is just going to be break this open, attack the king side. But what if, are there any other ways you can win? Like, are you going to try to attack the queen side at all? Or is this going to be mainly like a king side attack?
Yeah, that's a great question. Right now, I don't think we can win on the queen side. Not in the short term. Because we have played a4, a5. Right? So if these pawns were on a2 and a7, it would be a different story. But with the pawn already on a4, this weakness on b4, which is not a huge weakness, makes it difficult for me to create something on the queen side. I don't have like a pawn break that I can use. I don't have a weakness that I can attack. I don't have like an open file that I can really use. Like black's pawn structure on the queen side is like a rock. So I wouldn't try to go there just because I feel like my opponent would have to make some mistakes for me to actually succeed.
And would you argue that if black was able to consolidate, get the pieces off the board, black would have an advantage, or you think white would be able to play an endgame like just as well here?
If we didn't have the queens, I would say this would be a little bit closer to equality, but I would not imagine that white can be worse.
So do you think white's better here, or it's probably there's still a lot to be decided?
This is a slight advantage for white, so it's nothing very decisive or anything, but it's very stable. I could maybe, if I was white and I just played rook d1, king h2, king g2, king h3, king g2, I think it would still be about equal at least. There is nothing very decisive that black can do.
So what would you say is if you would go back to the very start, the best way for black to play, where it's the most challenging line? Because so far these lines seem to be very, very good for white, but I'm wondering what black can do to really challenge us.
That's a very good question. Well, I mean, first of all, let me show you some kind of standard positions. So we've seen one type, right? So in this position, what we have is standard advantage by having good control of the center, right? Then the next type of position that we can get is like, what if our opponent doesn't take, right? So maybe we can go back to the beginning, and then maybe around here, we're gonna change something. So we looked at d takes c4, maybe let's forget about that. And let's say, what if our opponent insists on not doing that? They just want to hold their center for as long as possible. So they play knight d7. And then here's one mistake that I see a lot. People play with white is they take. That's a huge mistake. It's a huge mistake because now our opponent has this kind of a rock solid pawn structure, and we are playing like a Carlsbad pawn structure now. So with white, what do we want to do? We kind of want to do this minority attack on the queen side, but the bishop is just not placed in the right square for this, right? So I think, yeah, this is just not working out for us, I would say, at all, right?
I wouldn't feel very comfortable here. I feel like you're staring at this big pawn wall with your best piece, and this bishop's completely taken out of the game already.
Right. And then here's maybe what you can think about is like, if I take and I ever want to open the diagonal, I might play like e4, right? And you can say, oh, look at my bishop, it's alive. But you know the downside here is that you have this isolated pawn on d4. And that is a problem, right? The opponent will just put a bishop on d5, and again, you're stuck. So you know, this can be a challenging way to play, right? But then how do we overcome this problem? Is with white, we just play knight bd2. We don't take, we just advance. So we put the 3 pawns on the 4th rank, and then if our opponent takes, that's a completely different story now, right? Because you see, these pawns have not been traded. In the other line, we took, and then we took, and then we advanced. Here, we never took. So because we never took, this bishop cannot go around, it cannot end up in d5. Our pawn is not isolated. So here again we are doing fine. So let me show you maybe an interesting tactic, just to, because I think it's good for people to kind of just look at this and feel like, okay, there is something memorable that I can use as a point of reference sometimes. So let's say I play rook d1 here. And the reason I play rook d1 is because I know my opponent will break, you know, like we were discussing before.
So
I'm ready to fight.
Are these breaks here, c5, e5, going to be like two of the main plans black's going to use? They just want to open this file up, basically?
For sure. I mean, this, what we have here, I call a Caro-Kann structure. So previously it was a Slav structure, this is a Caro-Kann structure. What's the difference? The pawn. In the previous line, we had a pawn on the e file. Here we have a pawn on the c file, right? So that makes all the difference. It's not a huge difference. But what's the difference is that in the previous position, well, I mean, we had an open C file, here we have an open E file, slightly different game, right? But in both situations, our opponent wants to fight our center, and the only way to do that is to break. So there is no other valid way for them to dispute our control of the center. Like if they play b5, that does nothing to me, right? I can even play c5 if I want to. So if they want to fight, they have to push. And the problem is there's always little tactics, right? Because we have this extra space and we kind of know what we are doing, so we are ready to fight back. So here's an example. Let's say our opponent plays c5 right now. What do we do? Take, take. Okay, everything normal so far. And then we have a tactic. Can you spot it?
So I'm assuming it has something to do with this light square diagonal, just because this is going to be our whole idea. It's going to be some sort of discovered attack. I mean, you make an argument for maybe knight g5, a bishop takes, back attacking the queen, and then you maybe win the bishop at the end, but the queen moves over here, you defends the bishop. I think the tactic is almost certainly going to be knight g5, threatening mate, threatening the bishop. I'm assuming the bishop has to take back, right? And then So
let's look at the first move. Knight g5. That's correct for sure. I mean, your intuition is exactly correct, right? You're attacking here and here. It's a very forcing move, and there is really only one response. It's like since I'm already threatening a piece and mate, you at least need to take something, right? So you take my knight. But now, rather than kind of showing my hand right away and taking on g5, I can first take the bishop. So you see, this leaves this bishop kind of hanging, but also the rook is under attack. So now our opponent, I mean, what can they do? If they take on c1, tell me.
Well, I was assuming that the bishop would maybe take first, and then if bishop takes, queen takes, but then you would win in exchange there, right? Or and I guess at the end the knight would be hanging, right? The rook's here.
Right. You go there. I will play here. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean that's kind of lost already. And then the other line is, let's say you move the rook. Anyway, it's lost.
Yeah, and now you have time to save the bishop, right? After queen takes back, bishop goes back. Oh, right, rook takes with defending the bishop too. That's a great find.
Exactly.
Man.
So we are upon up. No, but I'm sorry, we are a piece up already, right? Now, can this actually happen in a real game? I think it's very possible. What I think sometimes happens is people calculate these positions for a long time and eventually they realize they cannot push. So people sometimes look at these positions and spend a lot of time thinking. Well, you know what they are doing? They are trying to figure out if it's possible to play c5. And very often it's not possible. You have to pay a price. So people cannot manage to break and eventually they start getting squeezed. So maybe another line is knight takes, queen takes. Knight f6, we go away. And here we have this kind of interesting position, right? So maybe this is a good moment to stop this line, right? So let me just tell you a little bit about the plans, right? Similar to what we had before, right? We have center, we want to keep it. Our opponent wants to fight against it, right? And then what we want to do with white is we want to advance. So h4, knight g5, or bishop g5. Maybe I will try to create some checkmate threat on h7, just provoke my opponent to advance, to create weaknesses, right? And maybe they will end up hanging a tactic and I'll be able to win, or maybe they will be able to neutralize and will end up in some kind of a drawish ending. I don't see a lot of risk here for white, so I would say whenever I play this, I feel like I either win or draw. Those are like the two outcomes that I'm expecting. That's how good this position is for white.
So are there any like major flaws to playing an opening like this? Because it seems very flexible, very strong, and I can't imagine this being bad at pretty much any level.
Yeah, I mean, there are some, I would say, very accurate ways that our opponent could play that would maybe put us in a slightly more complicated position. Not necessarily wrong, but just complicated. Let me give you an example. So remember how at the beginning you were asking, what would happen if our opponent just took the pawn, right? So maybe we have to go back to this position. So far we've been looking at bishop e7. So let's forget about this move and let's say, what if our opponent just took, right? So if our opponent takes, then here we play bishop to g2, and then our opponent has like a huge menu of options they can do. They can play a6, c6, b5, bishop d7. A lot of these options are independent. They are similar, but they are different. We have to kind of learn a little bit about all of them to be truly ready. So let's look at one of them, just to get some idea. So bishop c6, I play knight e5, because I kind of want to put some pressure on b7. Okay, and then, well, bishop c6. Okay, fine. So I'm going to take, my opponent retakes, and then I'm just going to castle. Okay, so so far, I am a pawn down, not very concerned, because I think I'm going to be able to capture this pawn, but I have to play accurately. So my opponent plays queen d7.
I'm assuming that this pawn here in d4 is poison, right? Because it looks like it's hanging, but I'm assuming you have tactics here to get compensation if they take it.
Sure. So, well, I mean, if they take with the queen, I just win the queen because I do check. But if they take with the knight, I can take here, and I can go away. And yes, I mean, you are one pawn up, but look at the pawn. It's isolated and doubled in an open file. So the chances that I can recover this pawn are very high. Basically,
even that a pawn, even that a pawn looks really weak here. You have like queen check, and you can win this pawn. You're gonna come around. It seems like you'll eventually win all three of these at some point.
I would say we can definitely win two. Yeah, right. And then maybe our opponent will manage to rearrange their pieces and save the third one. But yes, I mean, I would imagine that here we're going to end up with a pawn up with white. I don't see any risk of being down material. So let's talk about what if our opponent doesn't take, right? So queen d7, right? Then here we have to play a little bit more positional. We play e3. We are protecting that pawn after all, so we can stop worrying about it. And because we want to clear this square for the queen, here it's very interesting. Our opponent maybe plays rook b8 to kind of get out of the diagonal. And then we play queen e2. And I play queen e2 to attack the pawn and to invite my opponent to push. So now we are objectively a pawn down. But let's talk about how to deal with this. I am a pawn down. I'm not going to be able to recover it anymore. So what I have to focus on is to have compensation.
I was going to guess, would you play something like a4, or are you just looking for development here?
Yeah, actually, a4, it's kind of tempting because I want to break. But the problem is, after my opponent defends, I don't know how to continue. So I actually have to play b3. So this is kind of weird, right? It's like the pawn is doubled. Why am I taking it, right?
Yeah, because it looks like you're... Oh, yeah, sorry, go ahead. Yeah. I was going to say, it looks like you're fixing the pawn structure there.
Yes, exactly. It looks like that. But before I did that, I attacked the pawn to push this b5. So even though you have these quote-unquote healthy pawns, they are not so healthy because they are very kind of disconnected in some ways, right? They are not next to each other. If black could unpush the pawn, bring it back to b7, they would be doing great. But they can't do that. So now they have this c7 pawn and a7 pawn, which are backward pawns, both in open files, do you see? So I have this rook attacking that pawn, and in two moves, what am I going to do? As soon as I get a chance, I'm going to play bishop b2 and then rook c1. So I will have both of my rooks on open files attacking backward pawns.
I'd almost be tempted to... I guess you don't want to do this because the whole point of the position is to have the bishop, but even just playing bishop takes here, it looks like you win a pawn, but do you think this would be kind of a mistake because you lose the bishop?
Yeah, that's a great question. In some lines, that's correct. But in some lines, we can get more. Because, you see, this pawn is already weak. So I can give up my bishop pair and my powerful bishop in order to regain the pawn, or maybe I can just win it without having to give anything back. Right? It depends on how well my opponent plays. So, but let's see, imagine, how this might go. My opponent might play rook here, I play rook c1, and then some people here just feel so kind of annoyed by this whole situation, they just play knight e7 because they don't want to have their knight on the way, and then we just take back. And here we are equal material, but we are better, right? The pawn is still backward, we have these powerful bishops. I'm probably going to play e4, e5 or something. This is just unpleasant.
Yeah, I would feel very happy. Even just going back to that position for a second, I would feel really happy here. I feel like you have this pin on the pawn. You have a lot of pressure on this backwards pawn here, and this bishop feels like it's going to be very useful. Where would you go here to start converting an advantage? Would you try to target this pawn? Are you going to move your rook to the a file? Open you basically wanted to go e4, e5 and open this way, or?
Yeah, that's a very good question. It's not that obvious, to be honest. So I would say black is not doing badly here, right? It's like they know what they are doing, right? So we are a little bit better, but what to do next is very delicate. I think my opponent will probably play queen d8 and they will try to break. And I don't think I will be able to avoid it, to be honest. So rather than trying to avoid it, I will focus on being ready for it. So that when my opponent play it, I have some annoying trap. So here's an idea. I can play 95, 94. Okay, I'm gonna double your pawns if you give me a chance. So let's say you don't give me a chance. Now, let's say you want to play c5 right now. I have this funny little trap, right? So maybe I will play takes, take. I don't know if this works, but I'm tempted to say check.
Yeah, I was wondering if queen h5 made sense first, threatening main one and then
yes.
taking the bishop, or...
Yes. I didn't see this one, but yeah, that's maybe even better. Maybe my opponent will have to play knight f5 just to save the piece, but yes. So maybe the conclusion is that our opponent will not play this because this is too annoying. So maybe they will play h6. And now we can try to get clever again. What's another tactical shot we could have so that our opponent cannot break? And a lot of this game is going to be about that. So, look at this funny line. I have bishop d7 winning an exchange. I would definitely give up the bishop for that.
So you just get a rook and you consolidate at that point?
Right. So, anyway, maybe our opponent will play in a different way. But this kind of gives you like a general sense of what we are fighting for here, right? Our opponent will try to break this. Maybe we'll have some tactical idea to prevent it. So how would I kind of avoid equalizing here? I would keep making these little threats, using my bishops, using some tactics, and maybe that will allow me to prevent this c5, in which case I will focus on the pawn. Or if my opponent does it, then I will just have an attack.
Yeah, I'm just curious if we went all the way back to the starting position, and we go into this Catalan setup. So I guess this is the main line theory, but instead of taking, what would be the most challenging line, the strongest way black can play to cause issues for white?
Yeah. I personally find the bishop b4 lines to be a little bit more annoying. They're not the only way, but they are at least very respectable. And let me tell you, first of all, why people even play this way. Bishop b4 check invites us to cover with the bishop. Because if we cover with the knight, we're kind of blocking our bishop. So, okay, we offer a trade and you're not going to take, you're going to go back. So you see what you did, right? It's like you wanted to go to e7, but before doing that, you went to b4 to invite my bishop to end up in this weird square.
And is there a better way to defend the check other than put the bishop in front, like going
No,
maybe
this is the correct way.
Yeah.
I think this is the standard way. It's just a little bit annoying. So now if we go to the other lines that we have been looking at, remember this line? We were looking at this and we said that here white could play knight d2 and e4. In the previous line we saw this and white ended up playing e4, but now the bishop is on the way. So what to do? I once had a student who was so determined to play the pawn on e4, he played bishop c1 to play knight d2 and e4 next.
That feels like I feel like moves like that where you put the bishop back on the home square or put them on squares like that. Sometimes they look a little weird, but they tend to be a bit more accurate than you would think.
Yeah, I mean, because the position was good to begin with, right? So yeah, we had an excellent position. Now we have an excellent position with a move down. It's not that bad. But obviously there are better ways to play. But so how do we play? Standard way is to play bishop f4. Then our opponent plays b6 and we put our rook on d1. This all may seem kind of funny, right? Why is the rook even going there, right? The reason is that in almost any line that our opponent plays, we're going to put a knight on e5 next. And then what we are planning to do here is develop the knight. You see, the knight on e5 defends the pawn, right? If I played knight c3 here, you might take. And I don't have a convenient way to recover this pawn.
I would hate this because I feel like my opponent would play b5, and with the bishop killed here,
exactly.
he's probably up like a clean pawn, right?
So yeah, we have ways to recover the pawn. Like here's one, maybe knight d2 and then take. And then if our opponent play d5, I have this funny pin.
Oh, yeah, now if he takes back, you're going to win that bishop.
But you know what they can do? They can play knight d5. And then when we take, they can take on f4. Which this is not wrong, okay, but it's also okay for black. So I would say this is about equal.
Yeah, I would be very nervous playing with like the just opening up this kettle structure and having the king just. I feel like the king would be wide open to different attacks.
Oh, but don't worry. Actually, this is not that bad. I mean, you can play e3, king, and then just play.
I guess yeah. If you can get the king over, so you're basically just gonna go for a big king side attack here, right?
Exactly. I mean, as long as you can put your pawn on e3, you're fine. These four pawns work very well together. But you know, the second that you play like e4, I will have some doubts about your position. So I really want you to put your pawn on e3.
So e4. What are if I just went for this? Let's say So I mean, what would our opponent play here to start? They'd play So let's say you go e4.
Attack your pawn. That's the problem. They will just go for that pawn.
So you're never gonna be able to protect the f, even if you went like queen d2 maybe, or are they gonna find something here?
This is not like you're not gonna lose on the spot. Okay, I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying like it used to be stable and nice. Now it's unstable. It's not as easy to play. Like if I play knight h5. You got a little bit of a problem here, right? It's like I have counterplay. I have this kind of like a relentless source of problems.
Yeah, it looks. I guess. Yeah, the whole position seems very flimsy now, and even this pawn here, you're probably gonna put a rook here, and now you have your bricks.
Yeah. So I will have piece sacrifices. I will have weird tactical shots that you're not expecting. Yeah. So if you play e3, it's like a piece forever. Right? You never have any problems, and you just keep going. So yeah, that's one way to play. But anyway, it's kind of a double-edged position. So we kind of avoid this by playing knight e5 in the first place. And then if our opponent does nothing, like let's say our opponent just wait and says, okay, you do something. I play knight c3, probably I will end up playing e4 sooner or later.
So now the e4 push makes sense. I guess no matter how you take here, you're gonna get some good play. What if he's taking after the knight?
Yeah. No, I'm very happy here. I mean, I'm gonna put a knight on d6. If you do nothing, if you try to protect it, I might look. Here's an example. I don't need to have a strong center. As long as I can just blow up the center at the right time, that's good too. Here I can play d5. And I would not want to be black here, because it's like, even if you trade everything, you might think that you're kind of simplifying the position and making things safer, but you are not. I mean, it's like this bishop is almost lost. You take, I take, attacking the rook. I can play something like even queen f5 maybe. I don't know. It's like I have a lot of annoying things that I could try here. And your position is extremely delicate. It's like you're one bad move away from like resigning.
So your main goal with the ready, just from what I've seen so far, is you're just trying to open this game up and let this bishop play on this diagonal.
Right. I mean, typically whenever you have more space, your pieces are more forward. I mean, look at my pieces compared to your pieces with black.
Yeah, I think as black, I can't even imagine playing a position like this. You're just like your pieces are barely developed, and you're completely on defense.
Exactly. So the point is that here, if I open up, when after we do all these trades, all my pieces are more forward. So if there is any tactical shot, it will be in my favor.
So you're going for it with the ready system. If you're a positional player versus a tactical player, you're trying to go into these positions with more of like a tactical mindset, using this bishop, using your knights, and just creating these open lanes.
Exactly, right. So the Catalan is not, I mean, it's a very positional line, but it has very good positional foundation, but it's also very tactical, right? So if your opponent makes a mistake, you will have some very brilliant tactics as well, right? But anyway, you were asking previously, it's like, is there any line that black can play that would be good? Let me give you the answer, right? What's a good line? So bishop b7, I think, knight d5. Here, what they can do is they can attack our bishop. They can play knight h5. And then where do we go with this bishop? I don't want to allow this trade. I don't like that here. So I will go away. And then you can play knight h6. It's almost like you're offering a draw, because if I play bishop f4, you have nothing better to do than to attack. Sometimes I can tell you, when I play like Blitz online, if a really high rated player plays this against me, I just play bishop f4 over and over until they decide to do something else. So they play some like a rook c8 or something, then I play knight c3, and then I play for a win. Because they have entered into this kind of a bad position, you know, because they were trying to avoid the draw.
So if you're pretty much any level and you're looking for an opening, would you say that the ready is something that pretty much anyone can play? Is this something it's better at higher levels, better at lower levels? Like because certain openings, like you can play it maybe.
I think it works for any level. I think, for example, I'm pretty sure Caruana plays the Catalan very frequently, right? So, and then I think Aronian as well, right? Aronian plays it maybe sometimes in a different move order, you know, like you're mentioning the ready opening, right? So sometimes when people play, they play like this, and then eventually they play c4, and then eventually they play d4, right?
So it's kind of like a transposition into the same opening, but you're going for a ready as opposed to a Catalan, but you kind of end up in the same position.
There's a huge difference.
Is there?
You remember that I was telling you that about that annoying check on before?
Oh, okay.
You don't have it.
Yeah, so now you're not gonna be able to get that.
Exactly. So you're kind of stuck playing the other line, which there's nothing wrong with it. Let's be honest, but at least it restricts your options.
So would you recommend this move order over the original, or they're both pretty much just like pick your poison?
Everything has kind of advantages and disadvantages, right? So what's the disadvantage here? If you play this line, your opponent might play d4, for example, right? Which is fine, but it's a completely different game. Now you have to be ready to play like a Benoni with white with a tempo, with an extra tempo. So you might play like e3 and then take, and then who knows, maybe you're gonna play b4 with a sacrifice or just d3. But anyway, that's like a whole other game. So you are trading one thing for another.
So you mainly just so the big difference then and the advantage for the Catalan is you're always going to be able to get that d4 push and control the space.
Yes, so I personally give priority to that over being able to avoid the bishop b4 check. But I think both lines are, objectively speaking, I think both lines are equally good.
Sweet. So I'm very excited. I'm probably gonna start playing this in my in my over the board games, because I've been trying to find an opening, but I feel like I like d4, but I felt like in these positions I would go for these like lines and they'd get a little boring. I just end up playing these very positional games, but here I feel like you have a very nice opportunity just to go for tactics and play for the win, play aggressively. So I definitely am excited to try this out.
That's awesome. Yeah. And you have a lot of opportunities for checkmate attacks, positional kind of play, tactics in the center, just win material from the opening. There's a little bit of everything. So yeah, I hope you will enjoy it.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mauricio. This has been a lot of fun, very educational. I'm sure the viewers will really appreciate it as well. Do you have anything to say before we head out?
Well, I mean, I would say just try to understand the ideas. The Catalan has a lot of kind of deep concepts that we need to understand. Once we do, we'll always have an advantage, and we can play this even in bullet. As long as you understand the ideas, you can really outplay your opponents just by kind of knowing what the right plan is.
Special thanks to Grandmaster Mauricio Flores for helping us absolutely master the Catalan. Make sure to check out his website, chessminds.ai, and use the promo code ChessGoon. This site is amazing. There's tons of resources to help you improve straight from a Grandmaster. And as always, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe if you learned anything from this video. I have a feeling if you made it to this point, you probably learned quite a lot. Other than that, stay classy, my friends. Until next time.